right, we're going to move into some other areas that were common themes among the panelists, and we hope that the audience will join us. One of the common themes that we kept hitting were the idea that women still have problems taking risks in many, many cases, that fear of not being perfect, fear of failure, fear of not meeting expectations, all kept women from finding the flexibility that they should to be sort of find their work-life balance. So is it the fear of change or the fear of not changing that influences women as you see it?
You know, I think... This is Callie, and I see this all the time in my work, and it's particularly difficult for the highest achieving women I find have the most difficult time with this in raising their hand and saying, you know what, I can't do this. And I need to make a change. I need to find a different type of flexibility. And the sad part of this is that I have actually had managers close to tears in their office talking to me about how they wish so-and-so had come into their office and said something. Because the problem is we present ourselves as having everything so together that by the time anybody notices that we're so overloaded, we're so gone that they can't offer us anything because we've already decided we're leaving. So it really is so important for us to raise our hands, come to the table with a plan, propose something. Believe me, if you are doing your job, a manager is going to sit down and have a conversation with you. If you've already left the workplace or you have presented a plan and it has not been approved, then you have wonderful resources like a Mom Corps where you could find another situation. But it's really okay to say, my realities have changed. I need to reset my fit. Here's the flexibility I'm proposing. This is how it's going to work for me. This is how it's going to work for you, and start the conversation because, you know, nobody's perfect all the time. So that's my experience.
We actually have a question from the audience. Katharina, I hope I'm saying your name correctly. What industrial companies are ideal for working moms? I'd like to transition careers, and one that understands my needs as a mom and can provide flexibility. Could you take this on, Maria?
Yeah, actually, it's a great question, and to the point that Callie makes as well. You really need to understand. I mean, I'm 100% with Callie. You need to take the risk. You need to go in and ask for flexibility. You need to also know, though, is it possible for your job to be done flexibly? And if not, you need to focus yourself on going to a place and/or developing a career in an area that is traditionally more flexible. So, to Katharina's question, there are some things that speak a lot more to flexibility. Working in PR, for example, working in accounting, seasonal stuff, so accounting is seasonal, doing marketing pitches is seasonal, things that are naturally, they can be done virtually, first of all. Second of all, they're naturally more open to flexibility. If you're a salesperson selling a product or service, you could pretty much guarantee yourself that you have to work 9 to 5. Now, perhaps you have to work from home, so there's that component of flexibility as well. But think about training and developing the skill set that you have so that it fits into something that's naturally a lot more flexible, because there are just sort of some things that are better that way. So, and to answer her question, I don't know if I would slice it by industry, but I definitely would slice it by functional expertise and specialty.
I would add, I would think, Maria, I would agree with you completely. This is Callie. But I would say, I got to tell you, I've had, over the years, people say, I could never have flexibility in X position, in X industry, and sure enough, I find it. Okay, so I think before you were to throw your hands up and say, you know what, I can't do it, look around, see what you might find. You could be surprised. And also always try for it before you leave, because that's your best bargaining chip is when you're ready to walk out the door, and you will be so surprised what you might be able to come up with.
And I would just add, one of the simple mottos that I've always done through my life that's taken me into 2 world wars, the Gulf War and also Soviet Georgia, is to ask. I'm amazed how few women actually ask, and I've always told all the people that I mentor, the worst they can say is no. And I don't know why that seems to scare women so much. But just remember, the worst they can say is no. And then you move on and figure out your choices from there.
I mean, to your point of fear, I think that's really, I mean, fear is one of the things that we have to think about if we want to make a goal for the new year, to try to overcome our fear. And fear comes from trying to be perfect. Fear comes from what's going to happen. And, you know, it's funny because I'm going to totally misquote it, but there's a famous Albert Einstein quote that says, "He who has not made a mistake has never tried anything." And I think that's what you have to just think to yourself whenever you're facing fear. So to Callie's point, I'm afraid to go in and ask, well, you know what? Nothing's ever going to happen, and your situation will never change unless you try to step out of that fear that you have. And, you know, you started with the point of fear, and I really think that's probably at the core of most of this.
One other thing just to put out there, I have it in my office, is fortune favors the brave. So you always, it's amazing how your luck will change the more you strike forward. I have another question from the audience. It's Veronica D. Thank you so much, Veronica. I'm a single professional in my mid-30s, and I'm proud of where I'm at in my career, and I've worked hard to get here. I worry that I'll be alone and won't have a family one day because I've been so career-driven. So what would you say to someone like me? And again, I think this is fear. So anyone want to take that on?
I'm going to respond to that real quick. I have one of our franchise owners is in that category exactly, and typically the people who own our franchises are women like me, people who have worked, had full careers, and then had families and struggled with that balance. But one of our franchise owners is in exactly that category, and she had that realization at some point that I'm very proud of my career, and I know I'm going to want to have kids, and I know I'm going to want to spend time with my kids. And she started really early to plan. She started thinking through what she would do, and my best advice to you is start thinking about obviously you're here, so you're getting some great feedback here, but start thinking about the kinds of things that you can do and put in place now so that you can have that level of flexibility, so that you can be nimble later on if you need it.
Yeah.
And then the last part that I'd like to do on this section is, can you give us some nice tips on taking risk? Maybe you're afraid of taking risks. Maybe you're concerned about what that will result in. So here are women who have taken risks. What has worked, and what would you suggest for women who might be afraid?
This is Callie, and I'm going to say the top thing that I say to women is educate yourself on how to ask. If you don't know how to negotiate, take a negotiation class. There's a wonderful class given online virtually by a group called She Negotiates. Fantastic. Also, the reason I wrote my book is because I wanted to give everybody the same step-by-step guide for how to put together a well-thought-out plan for flexibility that considers your needs, the needs of the business, and is going to have the greatest likelihood of being approved. And then how do you manage that flexibility day to day? Because once you have that skill and that knowledge, it's a lot less scary because you're prepared. And those would be my two tips. Learn how to negotiate and give yourself the skill set to manage a flex situation with a really well thought out plan.
Right, and to add to that, this is Marie. Just you know, the woman herself, like in their minds, a lot of times, a lot of people just would put in their minds the negative. Oh, I don't know, I'm nervous. What if this doesn't happen? What if? You know, you have to take that energy and just make it positive. Just go for it. You know, like Callie and Maria said before, and also Diane, if you don't go for what you want, it's never going to happen. So you might as well just take that risk, think positive, and just keep moving forward, because eventually something good will come out of it.
Absolutely. This is Susan. The only thing I would add to those wonderful tips is just to make sure you get support, too, and that if you have a mentor or if you don't, find someone that you can trust and someone that you can bounce your plan off and say, okay, does this sound realistic? What would you say if you were my supervisor? And get some feedback so that, you know, you have a little more confidence, too, going in to work on that plan.
I want
this is Callie. If there's one thing that motivates me, and for all the moms of girls out there, for me, what makes me be courageous is that we have to set a new example for our daughters who are going into a very different economic life reality. And if we don't start charting these paths and start crafting creative, innovative ways to manage our work and our life, then our daughters aren't going to see that. So for me, that's part of the motivation to be courageous, is that I want to sort of chart that path for my girls, because I have 2 girls.
You know, I want to speak in defense of the men, too, because I have a husband who works from home and really relishes his own flexibility, and I also have 2 boys, so I have to speak on behalf of the men. But I really think that it's important for us to charter the territory for all of us. I mean, there's not one person who has a family who doesn't adore spending time with their children, and yet having the time to do whatever it is that they choose to do, which is maybe writing a book or continuing in the professional environment. So I think, Callie, your point is great that you have to show your girls how to do it, but I think as a society we have to prove how this can be done. Because without it, you know, with it, our families get stronger. Without it, we have a whole host of other issues that we've discussed before: depression, childhood obesity, etc. And
Right.
you know, it really needs to be done.
Right.
I agree.
Yep.